I
It's new
know.
world we're in.
Okay. Okay, so I see us live on my LinkedIn. Yeah, so that's looking good. So thank you. Now that we have that over, I want to say a very warm good afternoon or good morning to our US viewers. Wherever you are in the world, we're so delighted you've taken the time to join us today. And I want to say happy St. Patrick's Day because on St. Patrick's Day, we all know everybody's Irish today. So today we're joined by the absolutely wonderful Stacey Hurt, also in green. Thank you, Stacey.
Heck
And
yeah.
I'm going to introduce you to her in just a few moments. But before I do, and again, for those who don't already know me, I am Maria Ennis O'Connor. I'm a communications consultant. I work at the intersection of healthcare, digital health, and social media. And to this work, I bring my own personal experience of being a cancer survivor. So again, this conversation I'm going to have with Stacey is very personal and very relevant to me as well. So thank you, Stacey. And again, for those of you who are perhaps not familiar with Merikoi, your host for this event, Merikoi is a global team of dedicated, talented people with a clear mission to co-create healthcare solutions that help people better navigate life with a disease. And what makes Merikoi unique in this field is the high value that it gives to patient experts. Merikoi's patient experts combine disease-specific lived experience with specialist professional experience, such as Stacey, to create better healthcare solutions. If you're curious to learn more, please visit merikoi.com for more information. Now, for those who tuned into our last LinkedIn Live broadcast with Kimberly Richardson, you may remember that I mentioned the origin of Merikoi's name is rooted in the Greek word meraki, meaning to do something with so much love, passion, or creativity that you leave a piece of your soul in it. And again, that description aptly describes our guest today, who brings, I know, enormous passion, warmth, and intelligence to her work on behalf of her community. And it's wonderful because Stacey is an award-winning healthcare executive with over 20 years experience working cross-functionally in physician practice management and pharma across sales, marketing, training, operations, customer service, IT, and human resources. I mentioned award-winning, and again, just before we came on the call, Stacey mentioned to me that she has just been the recipient of the Medical Life Top 50 Most Influential Voices of Healthcare 2022. So huge congratulations to you on that, Stacey.
Thank you.
So just to finish with my introduction, Stacey now serves as a global patient advocate, and she's a patient engagement consultant representing patients as stakeholders in clinical decision-making, in policy formulation, health IT, user experience, and pharma biotech drug development. So now we have the formal bit out of the way. We're so honored and we're so delighted to have you with us today, Stacey. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us in what I know is a busy month for you, it being Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. So perhaps, Stacey, we could start off, maybe we could start off with the award, because I think that's something to be, let's have a little moment around that. Let's maybe talk a little bit about what that award means to you. And also maybe if you could share a little bit about your patient advocacy journey. What has brought you from your diagnosis to sitting here with us today on this global stage?
Oh gosh. Well, first of all, Marie, thank you for having me today on your national holiday. Happy St. Patrick's Day. So this is truly special and a joy for me to be here today of all days with you. And yes, the wearing of the green. So yeah, the Medical Life Top 50 list, that was really a special honor for me because first of all, when I look at the profiles of my colleagues who are also on that list, it's a very diverse, compassionate, thoughtful group of healthcare leaders. The breadth of experience on that list, it really captures the work of so many different areas in healthcare. And we are all, I think I can say this about all of us on that list, we are servant leaders. And we're not here to, toot our own horn or whatever. I mean, being on that list just continues the work that we need to do to change our system for the better. And that's certainly how I view it. And me being on that list is representative of patients and caregivers being on that list, because that's what I do every day is, I'm just the medium. I'm just the go between the patient and their journey and what they're going through and how they need our system to work better for them, and me taking that to people who need to hear it and make the changes. So thank you for that honor. But like I said, I'm just the messenger. I'm just continuing the work of getting these stories out there of people who need heard. So that's that. My story really begins going back to my work in the healthcare industry. As you said, I have worked across physician practice management. I've worked in big pharma. I've worked in small pharma in a variety of functions. And so through my healthcare professional career back in 2006, my younger son, Emmett, was diagnosed with a rare disease. He has a chromosome abnormality, very rare, renders him globally involved, nonverbal, non-ambulatory, needing 24/7 care. And then, so I took some time off to get his needs squared away. I went back to work. And in the midst of going back to work, I was hit with my own stage 4 colorectal cancer diagnosis. And then I've continued forward to this sort of emerging career that I'm developing as a patient engagement consultant, and really connecting the dots or closing the gaps between those who work in healthcare and the ultimate end user, which is the consumer and the patient who are the recipient of those services. So I'm making it up as I go along. I have no idea what each day will bring, but I know that, when I get good messages through my advocacy work, that I'm doing the right thing. So I'll keep talking into my advocacy journey, and kind of how that evolved was that for my son, I continued to always have to fight for him. I have to fight for his nursing services. I have to fight for his equipment. I have to fight for his medications. I'm fighting and I'm in the US, I'm fighting the insurance companies to get approval. They don't see the medical necessity in what he needs. So I always have to fight. And because I worked in healthcare, I knew sort of the verbiage and what you had to say to get these things approved and the hoops that you had to jump through to get these things approved. So I sort of, became an expert at appeals. And so I started sharing that knowledge across the rare disease community. Then when I got cancer, there was a bunch of online support groups for cancer patients. And continually it was, number one, I had stage 4 cancer. So it was like, what are you doing to beat cancer? So it was, sharing my own sort of playbook of my own survival. And then it was patients saying, I'm being denied a scan, or I'm being denied a med, or I'm being denied this. How do I, and I would chime in and say, oh, you got to say this, you got to say you failed 3 things, blah, blah, blah. So they were all like, who, Stacy Hurt, she's this like sort of, expert or whatever. And again, it was just because I had worked in healthcare and I knew what to do. So, so my presence sort of grew and grew. And I started coming through my diagnosis, which was a complete miracle to be alive, complete miracle. I'm still alive. And then I knew that, and this was in 2019, I was like, technology is going to be the game changer. Technology is going to be that third voice in the room when there's the physician and the patient. Tech is going to be that third party in that continuum of care. And this was pre-COVID. So I knew HIMSS from, working in physician practice management. They were looking for these digital influencers, and you could apply to be this influencer. And I said to my husband, I'm going to apply. I'm not going to get picked because these people all have like 8 million followers. I think I had 10. And I said, but they need somebody like me. They need somebody that's going to stand up and fight for patients and caregivers, who also has been on the other side, And I got picked. And HIMSS, and then we went into COVID. The rest is history. But HIMSS has really given me a platform for my voice. I've been connected to, like I said, amazing individuals that continue to amplify my work and my mission. And I've never taken a dime for the advocacy work I've done. I love talking to patients. They find me online. They see my story out there, and I help everybody that I can, for sure. So that's the Stacy story to date, I guess, Marie. That brings us to today.
And so, Stacey, I feel a little bit exhausted even hearing about everything that you've had to do.
Me
And
too.
yeah, and so it's double advocacy for yourself, for your community, for the cancer community, advocacy for your son. Have you ever experienced burnout?
Well, yes, and I do. I have my green on. I wanted to say I have my blue on for Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month, which is March. Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, I'm not afraid to tell our audience that I have COVID right now, and I was extremely sick last week. I tested PCR negative. I thought I had a cold. I lost sense of taste and smell. Home tested positive. Don't know how I got it. I was extremely careful. Anybody who's seen my social media knows I was extremely careful. I'm immunosuppressed. I have low white blood cell counts. You could probably, my fellow survivor, Marie, knows what that's all about. So I knew it was probably a matter of time until I got it. But for me, and I'm doing fine. To my audience, let me tell you, I'm doing fine. I was not hospitalized. I'm very lucky that I had access to vaccines and boosters, I'm fully vaccinated and boosted. So I'm very lucky. But for me, it was a wake-up call that I need to slow down a bit, maybe say no to more things that I'm saying yes to right now, concentrate on self-care. I know we talk a lot about self-care, but I slacked off taking my vitamin D. Clearly it caught up with me. So no, and I'm always taking, my son is 24/7 care. I didn't really isolate. I just carried on with my N95 mask because of his care. But yeah, I do get burned out. And I think it's important for all of us in our own way to take time for ourselves and breathe and decompress, go outside, take a deep breath of fresh air. It's beautiful here. I'm in Pittsburgh, PA, USA. It's beautiful here today. I'm going to go outside and breathe it in and get rid of these germs.
St. Patrick must be smiling at us because we have a beautiful day in Ireland as well, which is most unusual. Stacey, I don't think that we talk enough about that need for self-care, and about that need, and actually that it's okay to say no sometimes, and about prioritizing yourself, because if you're not well and you're not able to do this, then you're no good to yourself, you're no good to your family, you're no good to your community. So I do feel that's a missing thing that we need to do more of, is to give ourselves permission to say no. I'm going to move on to the really meaty part of this, the tech part, in a moment. But I just wanted to say I was really struck by something you said earlier about as a patient advocate, we're making it up as we go along. I thought that was, there's no advocacy school that we can go to. Yes, there are certain courses. I know that, particularly in the US, I know that there are certain modules, certain things that we can do. But really, we've learned, haven't we? We've learned the medical language. We've learned to knock on doors, and that's a lot of work as well. So I just want to also acknowledge that there's a whole learning module there, and you have to do it when you're under extreme pressure, and usually in a very highly heightened emotional state as well. So I do want to recognize those parts of the patient advocacy journey. Do you think that there's enough awareness of that for those that are outside, perhaps working in industry, and invite patients to come in and work with them? Do you think there's enough of a recognition that actually there's a lot that's also going on behind the scenes? Do you think that?
No, there's not enough recognition. That's something people who follow me know I'm super passionate about, that, patients shouldn't be just this focus group or this, token group that, that we talk to episodically. Let's bring in a group of patients, let's talk to them. I was lucky enough to speak at Comodo Week for Comodo Health 2 weeks ago, and I was up on stage, and Oswin, the chief medical officer, asked everybody, if you had one wish, to change the system, what would it be? Of course, I would say to cure cancer, and I'm sure you'd agree with me. But besides that, in terms of working in industry, I call upon every company out there to have a patient, someone who identifies as a patient on your executive team,
Yeah.
on your leadership team. It should be a permanent part of your leadership team. And to your point, Marie, acknowledging that these patients do have disabilities and that you need to make reasonable accommodations for these patients, but to just discount them or marginalize them or leave them out of the conversation, you're missing an entire perspective of lived experience that you can't teach, that you can't that you can't have a one-day training program on. It is lived experience, and that patient has to be part of your everyday workflows, your everyday drug development, policy development, strategy development within a company. And like I said, it's easy to make accommodations. We now know we can do Zoom meetings, we can work from home and not miss a beat and be every bit as efficient. So we know that's possible. But understanding that, yes, we do have disabilities. We do have certain things that we have to deal with, but those are easy to work with. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Make the accommodations and make sure you're including that patient, caregiver, lived experience voice. Absolutely.
Stacey, I absolutely love what you say about having somebody permanently there, or a group of patients permanently there, because when you silo the patient advocacy or the patient engagement or whatever we want, a patient centricity role within one section of a company, then that's all, it's only ever going to stay within that. And it's only ever going to be on, it won't be relational, it won't be in the DNA of a company. So I think that's a really important point that I wanted to acknowledge and just underline that as well, that it's a key point.
Well, I have to say, I'm sorry, real quick. I've been to ASCO, which is American Society for Clinical Oncology meeting. It's usually in June. I've been there. And ASCO does a great job with including patient advocates. They've always extended free patient advocate registration. But they have a patient advocate lounge where patient advocates can go and have our own space. So what I would like to do is, in the patient advocate lounge, invite the oncologists to come over and sit down and have lunch with us and talk to us.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And let's just have a little fireside chat. And then at the oncologist lounge, have patients come in,
I love that.
And every panel on stage, instead of just having a patient, get up and speak, every panel should be integrated. Every panel should be patients and oncologists and researchers up there talking together about what's important. And of course, I say that anybody, again, who follows me knows that I preach this across the board. Every patient experience forum should have an actual patient. Every patient experience conversation should have a patient. So.
No, I love that. I love that idea of integrating, and that's modeling what it should look like within an organization. That I could talk to you about that particular aspect for a long time, but I will move on. But I do love that. Thank you so much for saying that. So you mentioned that you were speaking at Comodo Health. Was that in relation to Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month? What kind of things were you, what messages were you bringing to the table there?
Yeah. So no, it was super exciting. It was their company meeting, and I was up on stage with two brilliant women colleagues of mine, Angie Davis, who is president of Fight Colorectal Cancer, right now having call on Congress in Washington, D.C. They are doing great things to make policy change for patients, to have better access and better equity with care. I was up there with Stacy Lindsay, who's the executive director of the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation, which is bile duct cancer. She was a caregiver to her brother who passed away, and myself. And we were just talking about the importance of data in making informed decisions in care. This is a hot topic across I'd say across the healthcare ecosystem. And from a patient perspective, one thing that I said, so I'm in front of, 750 Komodo dragons that work there. And I said, unpopular opinion, maybe, but patients own our data. This is our data. And of course, every pharmaceutical company, biotech company, health tech company is capturing data. They need to. We know that. You need to tell us. that you're doing that. And you need to tell us what you're using that data for. If you're selling that data, which you might, and I get that, again, you have to tell us what you're doing. I use the metaphor, Marie, of your best friend borrowing your car. Okay. It's okay that your best friend borrows your car. Your best friend needs a ride, has to get to an appointment. They want to borrow your car. Just tell me. Don't make me look in my driveway and see it's gone. Okay. I mean, just tell me you want to borrow my car and what you need it for. And it's fine. I'm going to say yes. But you need to have that conversation at the beginning. So we were talking around things, the importance of data, the importance of accuracy of data. Of course, now we're getting into, remote patient monitoring and real world evidence capture from PROs, which is patient reported outcomes. So we're going to be more and more reporting our own data from either clinical trials or our care, understanding how that has to be usable, accurate, clean data, because you're only as good as what comes out is only as good as what comes in. And interoperability is another big piece of that, and getting these systems to work together. Of course, we see, we all know about EHRs, electronic health records, and any one of us that are out there that are patients have about 6 patient portals that don't talk to each other, that we have to, go into each one of them. Again, if we're lucky enough to have internet access, which is a whole nother conversation. And those not talking to each other and the need to do that. So those were a couple of the themes that I spoke on last week. And again, we're all in it together, making those things happen.
And so you talk about technology, and you talk about that was a fabulous phrase which I wrote down. The third voice in the room. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? About what you're most excited about, the potential of technology in cancer care and treatment and research?
Yeah. I think, when you talk about that third voice in the room, and people get a little freaked out by artificial intelligence, this AI, and again, I represent the consumers and the layperson and the patients. And when you hear AI, the perception is Big Brother, if I may, and it is this, creeper or whatever. And again, I think that's a part of digital literacy, health literacy, tech literacy, for tech companies to take that extra step and make consumers understand that they can trust AI, that it's a friend, and that this is here to help your care and make your care better. So I did some work with a company called Augmetics, and they just went public. They have a technology that helps reduce physician burden on EHRs, and that it is, augmented reality, virtual reality. It is voice-enabled technology to capture what the patient's saying, to transcribe into the record. So again, it's that third helper in the room for the doctor to capture what the patient's saying, to input into the EHR, which is really cool stuff. But what I said to them was, I want your next iteration to be for the patient, because as you know, Marie, sometimes when you're dealing with a devastating diagnosis and the doctor's talking at you, you don't hear what they're saying. I mean, I've had many appointments where I'm going through scan results or pathology results where I am so consumed with the trauma of what's happening to me that the doctor's like, it's like the old Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah. I am not hearing it all. And that's why I was fortunate enough to bring my caregiver, my husband, with me so that he could, say, okay, this, that, the other. But for those of us who aren't lucky enough to have somebody else, we need that third person in the room, which could be technology capturing what that physician's saying, because the physician's giving you a plan and you're only as good as what you understand about your plan and what you can execute. The doctor can give you the best plan in the world, but if you don't understand it, if you're not able to follow it, if you don't have the tools or the resources necessary to do it, to execute it, forget it, that plan's not going to happen. So, so I do think, like I said, I think it's a lot of education that needs to happen, a lot of obviously breaking down barriers to access the technology for our friends in underserved areas who don't even have broadband access, a lot of them. But understanding how tech can be a friend. We have a huge trust problem in the world right now. We need to overcome that for technology.
It's interesting listening to you, Stacey, because I'm also thinking about last month when we had the Close the Care Gap as the theme for World. I'm actually, oh my gosh, I got a chemo brain moment there for a second.
I get them all the time. Phil?
World Cancer Day. Oh my goodness, it was on the tip of my tongue. So the theme of World Cancer Day being Close the Care Gap. And that's one of the things that probably we didn't actually talk about at the time. And I'm really struck by that care gap in health literacy and digital literacy. And when we talk about the potential of healthcare technology to transform this space, but we also have to be aware of the people that's going to leave behind.
Yes. Oh, especially, I mean, we look at clinical trials and we look at, I believe people of color are only, represented in 5% of clinical trials. That's horrible. And that in no way mirrors our actual population, So then it's digging deeper. Why are we missing people of color? Why are we missing, people of various sexual orientations? Why are we missing people with different challenges than ourselves? And I got up for Comodo Health and I said it. I said, I'm a person who is white and privileged. Okay. So it is my duty and responsibility to reach people who don't look like myself, who don't speak English, who don't sound like myself, who maybe like my son don't even speak at all, who are have to find different ways to access technology, who are blind, who are deaf, who are cognitively, challenged. I mean, if we're true leaders, then we're in the space that we need to go 180 degrees to the space where we are not and figure out what those people's challenges are, what their problems are, what their day-to-day life looks like, getting public transportation, telehealth. I do, I'm on a telehealth advisory committee. Telehealth, like I said, assuming people have broadband access, assuming people are in a safe space, a private space. People are going to libraries and coffee shops to get on broadband. That's the reality in an underserved area every day. And taking a bus or a subway or other public transit to even get to that place of access, that's real. And if we're not taking that into account in every single solution we develop, we're missing it.
And again, I'm thinking back to the conversation that we had with Kimberly Richardson, who shared the experience of being a Black woman in the cancer community. And one of the things and in fact, she finished off by saying, this is everybody's responsibility. It shouldn't just be my community's responsibility. We all need to be doing this. We all need to be working together on this. And so when I'm listening to you, Stacey, I'm hearing you underline that as well. You say, this is our responsibility. We all have a stake in this. One word that keeps coming up, Stacey, a lot, understandably, is caregiver. Your husband as a caregiver, you as a caregiver to your son. So that caregiving experience, do you think, again, that there is enough recognition of what that experience is like within, let's say, within industry?
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. And I can tell you that firsthand when a lot of my advocacy work, proxy access. Proxy access is a complete disaster in terms of accessing medical records for clinical trials. It is a complete disaster. And so having access to whoever whether it is, my son who is nonverbal challenged. So he is, 16. He technically has a legal right to his medical records. Well, he doesn't unfortunately even know that he has a medical record. So having that guardianship or that ownership, and getting proxy access just for his medical record was a nightmare. So that's, that's one thing I can say. We saw the glaring gap of missing the caregiver experience in COVID, as
Mm,
people were, I can't even say it, dying alone of
mm,
COVID in the
mm.
hospital. With, of course, because of isolation and shutdown, their caregivers weren't able to be there, because of trying to stop the spread. So if you did not have an advance directive in place, if you didn't have a will, if you didn't have your wishes in place, healthcare professionals were making those decisions for you.
Yeah,
So that really shone a bright light on, we are completely missing the caregiver, or as Grace Cordovano calls it, care partner experience,
yeah,
and including them. And again, they need to be brought in at the beginning. Like when you're treating a patient, no matter, again, what their level of proficiency is today, that could vastly change through, unfortunately, the journey. If you have an advanced cancer, if you have, an advanced rare disease, etc., unfortunately, you may deteriorate and you're not going to have the capacities you have now to make decisions and everything. So at the beginning, you need to establish who is your partner in that journey and give them complete access, to the records. And yeah, and in terms of talking about, industry and everything, my husband will tell you about his journey as caring for his wife with cancer was much different than mine. And I can tell you that going through, and I don't know if you agree, Marie, but it was a lot tougher to watch my family go through cancer than me. I mean, as
sure.
sick as I was and as tough as it was on my toughest day, it was way worse watching them care for me.
For
So
sure. For sure. I had the same experience. My mom passed away from a brain tumor after I'd had breast cancer, and it was incredibly difficult. It was so much harder. I would have gone back and gone through my whole experience again, not to have had to watch her. And also it was interesting, Stacey, because at that time as well, a lot of what I'd learned from advocacy went right out the window because I was so panicked, which goes back to what you were saying. The emotions came flooding in. Um, Stacey, I'm curious, does your husband call himself a patient advocate or an advocate?
um well, my husband, as visible as I am on social media, my husband is the exact opposite. As public as I am and out there with everything. And I think that's what makes our coming up on 23-year marriage work, because we are such opposites, and he is my rock and the love of my life for sure. But I think he would definitely refer to himself as an advocate, when he needs to be. I mean, he's so squashed out by my presence that there's not a lot of room for him. But he would definitely call himself an advocate. He would definitely refer to himself as my number one, champion, ally, advocate, caregiver. And I remember last year in 2021 on Rare Disease Day, I was I was in Tucson, Arizona for the Cologuard Classic, and I got to meet Phil Mickelson, who's my favorite golfer, and it was great. It was a fun moment and everything. So I wasn't able to. I was traveling that day. I wasn't able to be on social media. But unbeknownst to me, my husband put up a beautiful, post about caring for our son with rare disease. And coming from a man, coming from the father of a child with rare disease, he got like all these likes, and he said, "I've never done this before." And like, I got all these, likes and everything. And I said, again, I just think that shows the power of vulnerability and authenticity, especially from, men or those who identify as men, that you don't have to be tough or strong or all the time. You can be vulnerable, and it's okay, and it's good.
Stacey, it's really interesting. I'm not sure if you know that for International Women's Day at Mericoy, we did a survey among our patient experts and asked them what motivated them to do patient advocacy, which actually I might talk a little bit to finish off with
Mhm.
you. But one of the questions was, do you feel that women advocate more, spoiler alert, yes, than men in your disease area? And why do you think that is? And so I was curious to hear that from you. And you mentioned vulnerability. And that was one of the things that came up in the survey responses, was that perhaps it's harder for men to show that vulnerability around their illness. And it sounds like that's something that you would agree with as well.
Yeah, totally. And I just think this gets back to gender stereotypes and, perceptions throughout, history and things like that, just the role of the male figure in the household and being the breadwinner and being this and being the dominant force. And yeah, I just, so yeah, I mean, a lot of it falls on moms, a lot of it falls on women and things like that. But I can tell you again, I always submit my own experience to make others feel comfortable. I can tell you without question that my husband and I are partners in the care of our son, that he does every bit as much and sometimes more than me. Our son is up every night. He doesn't sleep through the night. And because of my own immunosuppression and how, I get sick easily, my husband gets up most nights with Emmett and goes to work the next day at a full-time job, working more than 40 hours a week for sure. But and he changes as many diapers or more than I do. He does as many feedings as I do, medications, everything. So we are equal partners, and he is very proud of that. And he would be the first to tell you, that. And I can tell you, I gotta out somebody here. When I was at the Cologuard Classic last year, I got to connect with Ernie Els, whose son is autistic then, who's severely autistic. And I connected with Ernie over being special needs parents. And I said about, needing help and how, well, that's a whole nother conversation, that I severely need help and there's no help for caregivers, unpaid caregivers. But Ernie told me that he had just changed Ben's diaper 2 days ago. And the fact that he admitted that to me, and I don't think he would mind me sharing that, okay. That he is this world famous golfer, and he is sharing the care of his son with his wife, Liesel, equally as a partner. I just thought it was incredible.
It sounds like we need to have more of those stories, Stacey. We need to have more of these stories and more caregiver stories as well. Terry Cootie is listening in, and she has a comment. I think it's a comment and not a question. Caregivers are such a key component of recovery. I know this is something that Terry has written about, spoken about a lot, and she has a podcast with her son actually as a care partner. I think but they're asked to do so much. And I think if I got that right, because I'm just reading that, not from the comments, but from behind the scenes here. So I hope I got that right. But again, thank you for that comment, Terry. That went so fast. Can you believe that we are coming up to like the quarter to the hour? So we've been talking for, I feel like 10 minutes, but apparently we've been talking for 3/4 of an hour. I have one question here from Celia Choquette. She has got Celia loves to hear about data, and it's a great question. She wants to know, Stacey, if you could have access to all your data, what would you like to do with it? What would you do with it personally?
What would I do with it personally? Gosh, what a great question. Still to this day, I'm not going to lie to you. Every day I try to figure out how I did everything right. And my son suffers and I got cancer. I mean, we'll never know the answers. We'll never know the answers. But if I could roll up all of my blood work, which I was, sequenced and actually quite recently. And I got all my mutations and I got all of that blood work. I guess if I could just kind of roll that up and just look at, number one, if I did anything wrong, which I know I didn't, things just happen, genetics are genetics. But I think more importantly, what I did right that I could help somebody else with. So everybody always asks me, how did you beat stage 4 cancer? And again, I don't know. My oncologist doesn't even know. He's like, I wish I could bottle it and sell it. But I would look at every single thing that I've done in my son's journey and in my journey and try to help somebody else. That would be it. That would be the number one thing that I would do, because what good is the data? I mean, I'm good. I mean, I'm 51. I'm trucking along. I'm just trying to keep my head above water. I'm here to help other people. I'm here to help make their journey easier. That's why I'm alive. I shouldn't be alive, right? 8% chance. So I'm going to dedicate my life to number one, making my family's life better and helping somebody else have an easier time.
Oh, thank you, Stacey. And we're so glad you're here too. Stacey, I think that what you spoke about there actually speaks very much towards what you said at the beginning, which is, yes, we do, as patients, we do want our data used for good. And it is about that altruism, because there is a huge altruism within patient advocacy. And the number one thing, again, if I go back to the survey, the number one thing was wanting to make life better for other patients as well. And that's really, I think, the underlying thing about why we do the work that we do, so that people can learn from the mistakes that we made. And you said, wait, it wasn't mistakes. We didn't know any better, or treatment hadn't advanced to a certain stage. So, but there is a point where that altruism needs to be respected and needs to be treated with care by industry. So on the one hand, we can say, absolutely, patients say, take my data, make life better for others. But on the other hand, you and I are both saying, do that with care and in partnership with patients.
Well, yeah. And I mean, listen, I'm all about capitalism. If you're gonna sell my data, you better pay me too. I'm not, again, anybody who follows me knows I'm very outspoken. I tell it like it is. I do not pull punches. And I'm telling you, these patients that are in trials, these are pioneers of research. They need paid. They need all their expenses paid for. All the barriers need to be removed for traveling. Their parking needs paid for. Their gas needs paid for. However, and yeah, they need compensated. And yeah, if you're gonna make money from my data, I better make money too. So I'm very clear about that.
Well, I'm just going to check and see if anybody has any other questions or comments. And while actually I have Maria in the background doing that for me, I just want to say thank you so much again, Stacey. That time just flew. I was taking notes there, but we also wonderfully we'll have a transcript of this, which we'll be able to turn into a blog that we can put up on our website as well, because there's just so much rich insight what you shared with us today. So I'm just so grateful. I'd like to give the last word to you, unusually for an Irish person, but I would like to leave the last word with you. Is there anything, as we said, it's Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. Are there any key messages or key things that you want to leave viewers with now about their health when it comes to this?
Yes. In general, take charge of your health. Don't wait for it to take charge of you. Stay ahead of it, and maximize your healthy days to nip these things in the bud and get screened. So my biggest thing with colorectal cancer and colon cancer, they're interchangeable, is to initiate a conversation with your healthcare professional about screening. In the US, the screening age was just lowered to 45, and that's due to the incidence in colorectal cancer in young people aged 20 to 49. It's way up, so much so that they lowered the screening age from 50 to 45. So if nothing else, I ask our audience to have a conversation with your doctor about your options for screening. Don't be afraid, no shame, no stigma. Poop is beautiful. Our butts are beautiful. No part of your body is off limits. Your poop and your blood work tell your whole life story. I talk about this. So please, from a stage 4 survivor who never saw it coming, who was the healthiest person she knew, out running the day before her colonoscopy, please initiate a conversation with your doctor about getting screened for colorectal cancer.
Thank you, Stacey. And thank you again. We're so grateful to you. And it's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We will have this broadcast edited, although I think there's very little editing to be done. Everything Stacey said has been amazing. It will be on our YouTube channel. If you are subscribed to our email list, you'll get that through email. We'll also have a blog that summarizes the key talking points as well. So, Lá Éile Fádric. So that's happy St. Patrick's Day to all the Irish watching, or everybody's Irish today, as we know. So thank you again. Thank you so much, and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.